Welcome to the Abyss, everybody. Another awesome week of horror content.
Yeah, I'm fucking ready. We got some good stuff for you tonight. So, Britt and I had an interesting dream. So, had a dream that I bought a $6 scratch-off ticket, right? And
you made
I've
$5.
always liked scratch-off tickets, man. But like, we live in Utah, so you can actually buy them. But whenever I'm out of state, usually I might just buy one. I had a dream that I won $18 on it.
Wow.
That's a dream. Yeah.
I was expecting you to come out and be like, yeah, I won like $18.6 billion.
No. I was like, wow, $18. That's like 3x the money. And I woke up, I'm like, what a like mediocre dream, you know?
Yeah.
Really
And you woke
pigeonholing
up-
myself.
You woke up and you didn't even have $18. That's the worst part about it.
True.
What are you drinking, Cleet?
I'm drinking a Guinness Extra Stout.
An extra stout, huh?
Yeah,
Guinness
more
is
alcohol.
So good. Yeah,
5.6
you need
per-
more alcohol in your life. I'm drinking Who's Who. It's a hazy IPA from Mother Earth Brewing Co. And in typical fashion, I went with the can, and this can is fucking cool. It's like an owl standing in a skull that's like split in half. It's cool.
That's weird. I actually almost bought that when I was at the liquor store. I
Really?
remember reading the name. I'm like, Who's Who? I'm like, kind of like voodoo. Like that would have been weird if we brought the same beer.
I was going to say, one of these weeks, we just have to keep doing it randomly. And one of these weeks, we might get the same one. I was going to say, I already got mine for next week, and the can is fucking bonkers. So if you go next week and you see a crazy can, just get it. I'm curious to see if you can get the same one.
Okay, sounds good.
Did you
All right.
Did you go watch Long Legs at all? Or are you going to watch it?
It's on my list. I think I saw a picture of it. There was a woman on the cover. Was it a woman?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't know what it's about. There was a woman.
It's a woman.
That was it.
Yeah. Don't watch any trailers. Go in blind. I'm curious if that's going to change your perception because I watched the trailers and I got super overhyped, and I think that's kind of why it was ruined for me. But I'm curious.
Nicholas.
Go in blind.
Nicolas Cage, starring in whatever someone throws a script at him with.
That's true. That's
He'll
true.
take any role, man.
Well, when you're rich enough, why not? Keeps yourself
He's
busy.
not rich, man. He actually can he has a problem like spending money, and I guess he's like really broke. Apparently, he spent like $2 million or like $20 million, some ridiculous on a T-Rex head. But anyways, what are we talking about tonight?
But today, I'm going to be jumping into something called Jay's Journal. Some of you might know what that is. It's actually a book that might be related to someone real.
I read that when I was like really young, like 16, and
Thanks.
my boss, I think she said she knew some people about it because I think it happened in Pleasant Grove or around that area.
Yep.
It was definitely a freaky book. It definitely builds up quick at the end. You know, it's a slow burn. You're like, oh, whoa, when you read the book.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, it wasn't the best read, but it was okay. I'd read it for the first time like last month actually, just because I wanted to cover it. What are you covering though?
Random scary stories from online.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into the topic tonight, Jay's Journal. So those who don't know, Jay's Journal is a 1979 book that was published in a diary format. The book is laid out as an autobiographical account of a depressed teenage boy who becomes involved with a satanic group. After participating in several occult rituals, Jay believes that he's being haunted by a demon named Raoul. The book was edited and written by Beatrice Sparks, although it does boast the title of unknown or anonymous for the author, and is based partly on the life of 16-year-old Alden Barrett from Pleasant Grove, Utah, who died by suicide in 1971. Critics allege Sparks misrepresented Barrett's life and experiences. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So we are going to be covering the plot of the book, so it has complete spoilers. So if you have any desire to read the book and discover it on your own, come back to the episode after you've done so. It's a light read. It's only like 150 pages or so. We're also going to be talking about the potential inspiration for the book into Alden's life and unfortunate end, as well as an ending on the author, which is really crazy. In the mid to late 1970s, we follow Jay, a religious, depressed teenager who begins a journal after his Sunday school teachers strongly encourage him to do so. Jay nicknames his diary Judas, in which he begins writing poetry, venting his feelings about conformity, and discusses his parents, who he's frequently in trouble with. He has 2 best friends, boys named Brad and Dell, who he spends a lot of time discussing in these entries. Jay falls in love with a girl named Debbie Dale and begins writing heartfelt entries to her in his journal. And man, those entries are kind of cringy to read.
Well, I'm sure she won't be a bad influence on him.
No, not at all. It was weird because like reading it, the writing style was, I don't know if it was like the actual journal where she picked it up, but like there's always like segments of 3. Like he would be like, I'm so mad. I'm so pissed. So happy. I'm like, oh my God, like let's stop doing that. It was so obnoxious.
What is that from? Happy. Isn't that from the deck call show or something? I don't know. It's from something. Happy.
I don't know. It was just kind of, I don't know. Every time I read it, I was like, stop doing that.
The writings of a 16-year-old is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Brad and Dell discourage his crush on Debbie because she's known to have gotten around quite a bit in school. Regardless, his crush becomes gradually more intense to the point where Jay takes up weed when Debbie goes to Phoenix with her parents for her birthday. So he can't cope, and he's like, I'm just going to get into marijuana. Why not? For his 15th birthday, Jay's dad gives him a job at the pharmacy where he works. When Debbie returns from Phoenix, Jay begins a relationship with her, and his infatuation grows. Debbie begins to ask him to steal amphetamines from the pharmacy for her, and makes him cover it up by filling the capsules with powdered milk.
That's actually really sad. Was it amphetamines or was it opiates?
I think it was both. She asked for like 3 or 4 things.
Okay.
So he's filling those with powdered milk to get away from it. Although feeling guilty about what he does, Jay is far too infatuated with Debbie to refuse, so he continues to steal for quite some time. His guilt continues to worsen when he imagines scenarios of people being given the false, ineffective capsules to help with their intense pain. He especially feels guilty after hearing about his Aunt Laurel being in intense pain from cancer, up to the point where she was crying and begging Jay's dad to give her something to make her die. So he's starting to feel fucking horrible because all these people are just getting powdered milk now.
That's dark, man.
It's a placebo. His feelings towards Debbie become conflicted, and he tries to maintain his love for her. Jay is ultimately caught stealing the drugs by his dad, who fires him on the spot. The pharmacy then begins to get into some legal trouble. Jay's dad calls the police and has Jay sent to a juvenile detention center. Jay, who is still writing in his journal, expresses regret over these crimes and reminisces about life with Brad and Dell. He still gets frequent letters that Debbie sends, and it makes him happy, but then Debbie stops writing him and they break up, leaving Jay distraught. So he's in jail, letters stop, and they break up, and he's like, oh, this is horrible.
What a bitch.
Jay eventually meets Pete, who appears differently to him. Pete introduces him to matters relating to the occult. In further detail, Jay writes, Pete's into Astara and all forms of the occult. It's so far out that it shatters my wavelengths. He talks so easily about intuition, meditation, ESP, auras, life after death, the oversoul, how much karma a person must erase before they're liberated, how they can better influence the world in the new age, how they can recognize their soulmate, mysticism, esoteric science, hidden teachings of the ancients, the equations of life, etc. So it seems like, just a really good person for him to be around.
That's how Satan gets you, man.
Just gets you right into the occult. So Jay is confused by Pete, but eventually claims to witness Pete move a chair with his mental powers, like telekinesis, and he makes a wart on his finger disappear. He becomes drawn to Pete, who teaches him and a few other boys about different aforementioned topics. So he gathers them into this group. He's like, I'm going to teach you guys about everything, and we're going to be in this cult together. He writes about liaisons between him and Pete, in which they discuss auras and psychic selves. Eventually, Pete begins giving Jay herbs that make him have strange yet alluring dreams. I don't think they're herbs. He's just slipping peyote. He's like, here you go, buddy. Have a nice sleep.
Have some LSD. Go to bed.
What's this bucket of stuff? It's a bucket of LSD. I mean, it's herbs. Don't worry about it. Herbs and spices. Jay is upset when he's informed that he's soon going to be released from the detention center, but his perspectives on family soon improves, and he begins missing them and anticipating arriving home. He's like, I don't want to go home. I've got Pete in my cult. Don't make me leave. Jay is released into the custody of his parents, but finds that his home life isn't at all what he was expecting. At a dinner with his cousins, he tries to go into the topic that Pete had taught him about, but he's shut down immediately. Upset, he renounces his faith completely and strives to see Pete again. He goes hitchhiking to meet up with Pete, who tells him to invite his friends to a secret group that he's forming. Eventually, he gets caught, and his parents ground him, and while at school, Jay tries to explain Pete's teachings to Brad and Dell, who just laugh at him. Like, you're a freak, dude. There's no way that's real.
You can see people's auras.
Jay becomes hypnotized by Pete's teachings, and that's all he can think about. But he decides that he needs to get his life together rather than focusing on the occult. His first steps begin by getting a job. Jay's dad gives him a job at a stationery store, but Jay feels bored of his life. Jay, Brad, and Dell eventually get roped in by missionaries who've been sent by Pete and are given a list of kids to recruit into the cult. Jay begins to hang out with members of the cult, enjoying his time. He has many other romantic interests throughout the story, particularly one with a girl named Janie, who spurns him after he doesn't agree to go to a dance with her.
I bet she'll be a good influence on him.
Yeah, someone has to be, right? Someone he meets has to be
You can't
good.
get 2 strikes in a row. That's ridiculous.
That's never happened, ever. Jay's faith becomes conflicted with the introduction of Satanism. He eventually meets a girl named Tina, who becomes interested in him. So, second one actually might have been okay.
Okay.
Third one, though. They begin having liaisons, and Jay begins to fall in love with her. Tina brings him further and further into the satanic lifestyle, wherein she encourages him to take drugs and participate in orgies, often with animals. So that's fun.
Wait. That's nasty, man.
You don't remember that when you were reading it at 16?
We're bringing old Bessie in.
When Jay decides to step away from the rituals and break up with Tina, she convinces him via witchcraft to stay with her. She's like, no, you don't get to leave.
I don't believe that, but all right.
Are you saying this is all BS? Is that what you're saying?
No, he's whipped.
I see. The two of them decide to quote-unquote get married in a graveyard where they strangle a kitten on the altar that they use. After the wedding, Jay's lifestyle becomes more reckless when they begin attacking cattle, taking baths in the blood to baptize themselves. Jay's writing and poems begin to become more and more unhinged. I mean, I remember reading this part, I'm like, damn, shit's getting crazy real fast. Like you said, like you get to the end and it's just like, it's crazy.
It's a slow burn, but then it explodes.
Yes, right in your face, like cow blood.
All in your face.
Eventually, Jay decides to participate in the school's production of Barefoot in the Park. So he's like, I'll just take up theater. Why not? Another kid lands the role that Jay wanted. And then suddenly that kid's appendix bursts. Coincidence? I think not. But that left the role open for Jay. Jay suspects that Tina may have had something to do with the incident, and eventually the two of them break up when one of Tina's ex-boyfriends contacts her, which leaves Jay heartbroken once more. So they just broke up, even though they were married in this graveyard. She's like, oh, I'm going to go back with my ex. He's way cooler than you are, Jay. See you later.
He's taller and stronger. Makes more money.
Yeah, basically. Just got out of prison. He's cool. He's got a tattoo. Eventually, Jay has visions of a demon named Raoul, and he starts to believe that he's been possessed by him. Tragically, both Brad and Dell die in car accidents, seemingly leaked to the occult's practices. Jay then becomes sick when he goes to their funerals. When Jay's little brother Chad becomes unnerved and tells Jay that he doesn't recognize him, Jay admits that he doesn't quite feel in control of his body anymore. In one final attempt to save himself from Raoul, he decides to contact the bishop for an exorcism. He writes a note to his parents requesting that all of his possessions be given to Debbie as a wedding gift. Now, Debbie was the very first girl that he loved. The story ends with an epilogue in the form of a letter written by Jay's mom, which is addressed to Janie. She writes that they found Jay dead, having shot himself with a gun in the head. Devastated, she reflects on his life and celebrates the 16 and a half years that he lived. So that's the story of Jay's journal summed up. But before we jump into like the aftermath and the real story, we're going to break for Cleet's Scary Stories Online.
Ooh, the real story. I haven't heard that, so I'm excited. All right. The first story I'll be talking to you about tonight is called The Baby Farm.
What the fuck did you just say? The baby farm?
I come from a family of sensitives, so I've had paranormal and supernatural experiences all my life, as has the rest of my family. I don't really get scared when I have experiences, as I'm so used to them, and I have techniques to keep the more darker entities at bay. Things still take me by surprise or creep me out, though. This is one of them. When we reached 10 years old, my cousin and I were allowed to play on the street just outside my auntie's house. There was a busy lane which ran down beside the side of the houses where all the kids used to run up and down, kick a football around, rode their bikes, and generally messed around. I liked it because I had a long walkway to practice pushing my wheelchair without the danger of the main road, and my cousin, our friends, and I spent hours of fun running and wheeling up and down that lane. There was a funny little dead-end alley just leading off the lane which always had a weird vibe around it. There was only one house at the end of the dead-end alley, as all the kids used to call it. The house was different from all the other houses around it. The others were bright, colorful, and cheerful, full of life, with neighbors talking over fences with one another, and always ready to tell us kids off, tongue-in-cheek, for making too much row, a typical slang term for noise in West London. The house, dead-end alley, was always dark, even on sweltering hot summer days. It have seemed to have gloom hanging over it, like a dark, ominous cloud. Obviously, we, being merely 10-year-olds, were banned from my mama and aunt from going anywhere near the alley, let alone the empty, abandoned house. Although my older cousin and his mates were 13, hung around dead-end alley from time to time with the sole purpose of frightening his little sister and me with horror stories of the house and its imaginary, monstrous inhabitants. Having heard rumors about the dark history of the house, although not knowing anything concrete, the house had the dubious reputation as a haunted house. One typical summer day, my cousins and I were playing in the lane with our friends. We kept hearing a baby crying. Now, being in the middle of a council estate, it is not uncommon to hear a baby cry, so we paid no attention. However, as the afternoon wore on, the baby's cry became louder and constant, almost deliberate. That got our attention, and we all decided to investigate the noise, so we stopped playing and began to look around. To our horror, after searching for the route of the noise, we realized that the baby's cries were originating from the front garden of the dead-end alley house. One of our friends, who was slightly older, said he would go nearer to have a look. We were all concerned by now, as it seemed obvious to all present that it was a real baby who was in distress, but everyone present also pleaded with him not to do it. But he was, and still is, a very principled, moral person, and his conscience overcame him. We waited for 10 minutes until he came back. He looked awful. His face was white as a sheet, and he looked physically shaken. He told us that he went into the garden, but there was no sign of a baby anywhere. His best mate asked him if he saw anything else, and just nodded and said, I don't want to talk about it. Nobody forced the issue. In fact, I think everyone was secretly relieved about it. We left very quickly and returned to the safety of home. Years after, my cousin and I were talking to her mom, and she began to tell us about the history of the local area. The subject of the dead-end alley house came up. We were horrified by what my auntie told us. It still gives me chills talking about it now. In the 1940s, the area where their family lived was way rougher than it was in present day. Lots of domestic violence, gangs, prostitution, and unwed mothers. Also, a high pregnancy rate, which is to be expected in some ways, what with the war. Along with it came its fair percentage of unwanted babies. It turns out that the house in Dead-End Alley was a baby farm where women took their babies that they couldn't look after or didn't want to women or couples for a fee. They would take these abandoned infants in and find good homes for them. It was said by the locals that the couple running the baby farm were quiet and unsavory pair, and there were rumors at the time of coercion and intimidation of young unwed mothers to give the awful couple their babies, and neglect and abuse of their young charges. Then the scandal was uncovered. In the 50s, my auntie didn't know the full facts. The remains of several infant bodies were found in the front garden in a shed where the husband kept his gardening tools.
Oh, Jesus.
It was dark, man. The couple were obviously charged with murder, and because of the number of remains discovered, they were put away for a long time. We don't really know what the truth is of what happened that hot summer's day long ago, but my cousin and I have our theories. My cousin still lives in the same house with her own family and my auntie, and every time my husband and I visit them, I still get the chills when passing by Dead End Alley. And our friend who went to look for the distressed baby, who my cousin and I are still friends with, has never revealed what he saw in the garden of Dead End Alley House. Pretty dark stuff, you ask me.
I would say any story that involves dead children is a little intense.
This one is called The Scariest Time of My Life. One day, me and my best friend went out to this abandoned place in the back of a high school. We were rummaging around in the forest looking for these books one of my other friends have seen one time. These were known to be demonic witchcraft books. These books were also known to be possessed by demons. Seems like a regular story, you know?
Yeah, totally.
My friend and I just wanted to be funny, so we lit one of the books on fire. The crazy thing was, as soon as we did that, we heard screams as if there were something living inside the book. At the time, we were freaking out, and when we heard a voice behind us, we both looked behind us and saw a figure. Mind you, it was nighttime, like it was pitch black outside. We called my other friend to come pick us up. This is the friend that had told us about the place and the books. Then, as soon as we thought everything was fine, the phone that we were calling on somehow turned off and ended the call. My friend had my location on at the time just in case anything went wrong. We saw a light and thought it was my friend's car, so we went to it just to find that it wasn't his car. Instead, we found a lady with a flashlight. We asked what she was doing here, and she answered, "I heard you three were out here." We both answered, "You three?" as in confusion because there were just two of us. She answered, "No, there's three of you. You, your friend, and the other guy." We were terrified. I like how she doesn't say your other friend.
I know, she just knows. Well, I know this guy's your friend, but then that other fella.
I just got to give you pretext. He's totally your friend. The other guy.
Yeah, that other guy. He seems like he's like a weirdo.
We were terrified because there's only two of us. Thanks, Sherlock. Then we seen our friend pull up. This time it was our friend, not a lady.
What?
It's so badly written.
What is happening?
It wasn't
a friend, not some lady.
Not a woman. Not a woman. It was our friend.
Wow. But
what happened to that woman? I don't know.
know.
We ran to the car and explained what happened. He was very concerned for us, and we told him we were okay. Ever since, we never went back. Just to make sure whomever is reading this is a completely real story, and to show people our experience, and hopefully you don't experience this like we did. I have one small ask. Do not ever narrate this on a podcast. I'm just kidding.
Really? I was like, holy shit. I was like, Cleet, you committed a capital
son
sin,
of a bitch.
buddy. We got all the way to the end and we can't even fucking use it. I specifically asked, two idiots should not ever read this for an audience to listen to. All right, so let's jump back into the story of Jay's journal. So we just wrapped up with the synopsis, or basically just a full-on spoiler of it. So some critics have challenged the authenticity of the story, noting that the editor of this book, Beatrice Sparks, has filled the same role on many other actual anonymous diaries of teenagers that explore such sensational themes as drug addiction, teenage pregnancy, and prostitution. These books, the most well-known being Go Ask Alice, serve as cautionary tales. Did you ever read that one? That was like the first one she did. I never read that one.
Yeah, I read that. It definitely made me feel the same way because it was like very similar in writing style to Jay's journal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it like when we finish with like her, because she did that a lot. But I never read Go Ask Alice, but I probably will. According to a book written by Barrett's brother Scott, A Place in the Sun, the truth behind Jay's journal, and interviews with the family, Sparks only used 21 of the 212 total entries from Barrett's actual journal. So there was a journal, and it had 212, and she basically used 21, and the rest completely fabricated. Like, she just made it up. The other entries were fictional, with Sparks claiming that they were based on case histories from other teenagers that Sparks worked with and interviews of friends and acquaintances with Barrett. And we'll get more into that piece there because it's actually really frustrating. But yeah, basically completely fabricated. Within the city of Pleasant Grove, Utah, Jay's journal has been the source of many urban legends, including alleged locations where Jay performed actions described in the book, his home, the effect of his family after his death, and other rumors. So there's like a bunch of people who, like, when this came out, they were trying to find like the locations where they would go kill the cattle, where they would bathe in blood, where they did all this ritualistic stuff, and like the house where he lived was actually like targeted. It's really crazy. In 2004, a local Salt Lake City paper, City Weekly, ran a story containing interviews with the Barrett family and their friends. Apart from pointing out the book's untruths, its authors asserts that, ironically, the book Jay's Journal actually inspired imitative acts of what readers took to be satanic rituals. So like she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna try and warn against it," and it's like, hell no, people are gonna go and do this now. It's ridiculous.
People are doing cow bloodbaths now.
Yeah. Funny you mention that, because due to allegations of ritual cattle mutilation arising in Jay's journal, the book came to attention of Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers who investigated reports of killed and mutilated cows in Alberta. So this went all the way to fucking Canada because people were talking so much about the mutilated cows for satanic rituals. So anyway, that's Jay's journal. A sad story about a kid who lost his life to the devil, but the supposed true story has some very vast differences. We're now going to talk about Alden Barrett, who's the supposed real-life person that the book is based off of. We're also going to discuss another book called A Place in the Sun, the true story of Jay's journal, and the author, Scott Barrett, who's Alden's brother. So one of the boys worshipped the devil, the other struggled with real-life depression. Both committed suicide. Largely due to the book Jay's Journal, the first fictional boy has long been thought to be the second boy who lived in Pleasant Grove, Utah. A Place in the Sun tries to correct the popular misconceptions by using both the real boy's real journal and interviews with those who knew him. So his brother's like, I'm going to write an actual story using actual journal documents to try and clear it up, because like after Jay's journal came out, everyone read that and they were thinking that this actual kid was doing satanic rituals, when that wasn't the case. He was just a really depressed kid. Jay's Journal by Beatrice Sparks has long been popular among those loving or fearing Satanism in Utah because it was presented as nonfiction. So readers viewed it as a credible source for examples of Satanism, and nearly 100,000 copies of this are in circulation. According to Barrett's book, Alden was nothing more extraordinary than a friendly boy who fought depression but ultimately lost. Of the many things that he may have been, satanic wasn't one of them.
That's your legacy. Like, you were just a depressed kid and somebody like takes advantage of you, if it's true, you know, but
yeah. So the bulk of the book is Alden's own engaging journal. The format includes a reduced image of the journal on one side of the page with the transcription on the other, which allows readers to better feel the emotion and personality of the journal as a whole. The dominant topic in Alden's writing is a romantic love, a longing for a savior to lift him from his depression. So it's actually really sad. Like, most of the real journal was him just being like, I wish someone would help me with it. I wish there was a way out of this. Like, you know, like an actual typical depressed person who's really wanting help. He does make references to drugs, but they hardly ruled his life. And for a period of his writing, he was avoiding drug use. Whereas in Jay's journal, she writes out to where he's like, he's just seeking drugs and he's doing all these drugs to make himself feel better. And then he's like, oh, I love drugs. It's not the case. Also included is religious and social commentary. Following the journal are several of Alden's poems. The goal was to illuminate what Alden was actually like, In his personal journal, Barrett interviews Alden's former associates, and these include his family members, schoolmates, girlfriend, and teachers. And to dispel the rumors, these interviews pay particular attention to probe areas of Jay's life, assumed to be shared by Alden. Barrett, who found Alden's body after the suicide, includes his own accounts of the events at and surrounding Alden's suicide. He found his own brother. That's rough.
Yeah, I bet.
Jay and Alden are far from similar, as A Place in the Sun makes very clear. It's engaging because of its diverse style and its personal nature. And true to its intent, the book conveys messages highlighting relationship problems and ways of dealing with them. All right, so now we're going to talk about the author, who is only given credit to editing the book, but she actually wrote it. Beatrice Ruby Matthews Sparks was born January 15th, 1917, and died May 25th, 2012, was a Mormon youth counselor, author, and serial hoaxer. Known primarily for producing books purporting to be the real diaries of troubled teenagers. The books dealt with topical issues such as drug abuse, Satanism, teenage pregnancy, and AIDS. Although Sparks presented herself as merely the discoverer and editor of the diaries, records of the U.S. Copyright Office list her as the sole author for all but 2 of them, indicating that the books were fabricated and fictional.
I don't know why, but I just keep finding these damn journals.
They just keep making their way to me, and I just want to edit them and release them.
I just keep making money on these goddamn journals I keep finding.
I'm just a Mormon editor. I don't know what you want me to do.
These stories literally write themselves.
So Beatrice was born in Goldberg, Custer County, Idaho, and grew up in Logan, Utah. She was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and an aspiring writer who contributed to local businesses and church publications. In her later years, she claimed to be a licensed psychotherapist and youth counselor with a PhD in either psychology or psychiatry. Critics strongly questioned her qualifications and experience, having been unable to find a record of her PhD. That's weird. She claimed to have all these qualifications on her book jackets and in her resume. One interviewer wrote that Sparks was vague about specifics when asked about her counseling qualifications and professional experience. She was like, yeah, I don't know, I just did a lot of really cool stuff, and I counseled kids, and then we're good. Nothing further.
No further questions.
Exactly. Sparks claimed that her experiences working with troubled adolescents made her want to produce cautionary tales that would keep other teens from falling into the same traps. Her first book, Go Ask Alice, was published under the byline Anonymous in 1971 and became a bestseller with several million copies sold. Can you imagine writing that? Putting down Anonymous, and then it sells millions of copies. The book was presented as the diary of an unnamed teenage girl who became involved in drugs and underage sex, vowed to get clean, but then died from an overdose a few weeks after her final diary entry. When Go Ask Alice first became a hit, Sparks received substantial royalties, but as an aspiring author, she was frustrated that her name was not on the book. Well, that's what happens when you post it as anonymous. In interviews conducted over the next few years, Sparks identified herself as the book's editor and claimed that it consisted partly of the actual diary of a troubled teen and partly of embellished events based on Sparks' experiences working with other teens. Sounds a lot like Jay's journal. Sparks was unable to produce the original diary for critics, and investigator Aline Pace Nelson publicly questioned the book's veracity and verifiability. Later editions of the book contained the standard disclaimer. This book is a work of fiction. Any references to historical events, real people, or real locales are used fictitiously. Other names, places, characters, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to actual events or locales or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. So that takes a lot of the fiction right out of it, wouldn't you say?
Seems like she was just trying to get another check. Big fat check in the mail.
In 1973, while Go Ask Alice was still enjoying widespread success, Marcella Barrett of Pleasant Grove, Utah, so this is the real guy's mom, approached Sparks about editing the journal of Barrett's deceased son, Alden, as she felt that his story might help other at-risk teens. So the mom approached the author and was like, hey, I want you to basically edit this and send it out there as a cautionary tale. The result was Jay's journal in 1978, which presents the purported diary of a teenage boy named Jay who was drawn into Satanism and then took his own life. Barrett's family was unsurprisingly horrified by the book, and despite the changed name, residents of Pleasant Grove quickly concluded that Jay was in fact Alden Barrett. So, Can you imagine, like, hey, I want you to write about my son's experience as a cautionary tale, and you get this book back that basically claims that he was vowing his life to Satan, and it's completely fabricated? Like,
murdering cows. And
Barrett's family insisted that he had never been involved with Satanism or the occult, and that only 21 entries from his true journal were used, while the book contained 212 passages purporting to be that same journal. Barrett's family also contended that Sparks fabricated stories of satanic rituals for the books. Sparks responded that she got the extra material from letters and interviews with Alden's friends. Later, investigators suggested that Sparks added claims of Satanism so Jay's journal could receive a promotional boost from then-current social concerns about that topic. Conversely, the book was said to directly influence the satanic panic of the 1980s. So after Jay's journal, Sparks produced several more quote-unquote real diaries, including It Happened to Nancy by an anonymous teenager dealing with AIDS, Almost Lost, the true story of an anonymous teenager's life on the streets, gang violence, Annie's Baby, the diary of Anonymous, a pregnant teenager, Treacherous Love, the diary of an anonymous teenager, pupil seduced by a teacher, Kim, Empty Inside, the diary of an anonymous teenager, eating disorders, and Finding Katie, the diary of Anonymous, a teenager in foster care.
I want to clarify, that's Finding Katie, not Fighting Katie, right?
Yes, Finding Katie. Fighting Katie. Just start fighting. In the 2020...
It's about a boxing match with the author and this girl. It's a cautionary tale of Fight Club, real life.
You can't talk about it. In the 2022 book Unmask Alice, LSD, Satanic Panic, and the Imposter Behind the World's Most Notorious Diaries, investigator Rick Emerson presented evidence that most of Sparks' works were hoaxes. No shit. Made up of fabricated prose that Sparks claimed to be copies of real diaries from teenagers who never actually existed. And in the case of Jay's journal, significantly altered and padded prose from Alden Barrett's true diary.
Yeah, my fake dar's going off on this, but, maybe it is true. Well, we're going to end on one story with me called Paranormal Experience?
Question mark? Was there a question mark in there?
Yeah. I once stayed with my best friend at his grandparents' house while the grandparents were visiting their other property for 6 months. At the time, we were two 20-year-old men who were happy to get this huge house to ourselves rent-free. The house itself was super old and creepy, especially at night. The grandparents had a separate bedroom as they had been together for over 50 years and enjoyed having their own space.
I feel like the separate bedrooms there's so many different reasons, like, oh, you snore too loud or whatever. It's like, I don't know. It's just weird, separate bedrooms.
I just hate you. The grandma's bedroom was downstairs, while the grandpa's bedroom was upstairs on the other corner of the house. So it's like far away.
So it's not even just different bedrooms. It's different houses and different quadrants of the home.
I stayed downstairs in the grandma's room, and my friend stayed in the grandpa's room. The grandma's room was at the end of a creepy hallway and had dolls all over the room.
Fuck that.
The porcelain dolls. I noticed the doorknob to my room would creak when I turned it. Important for later. Anyways, we stayed here for a few days with no issues. We would lock all the doors before going to bed and noticed nothing out of the ordinary. One night, I'm in bed on my phone, then I decided I'm ready to go to sleep. It's a summer night and pretty hot out, so I was trying to sleep out of the sheets on my stomach. In hindsight, it's a pretty vulnerable position. I suddenly hear the doorknob get grabbed and creak as if someone is trying to open the door. I told myself it was probably just the knob releasing and nothing to worry about. But then I flip over and listen. I heard footsteps walking down the hallway and into the kitchen. From there, I heard banging and loud noises. It was so loud, I assumed it had to be my friend, but after a few minutes, I wondered what he was doing. I called his phone, and when he picked up, I could tell he was dead asleep. He had just woken up and just said, "What's up?" I could hear it in his voice that he was obviously upstairs asleep. I told him someone was in the house. We both creeped out of our rooms and checked the house. We found nothing. At this point, I was freaked out because I knew that something was there. His grandpa's room has 2 beds in the room. So I went up to sleep in there. After getting set up there and laying down for 5 minutes, I said, "We have to check the house again. I know someone's in here." We again went back downstairs. This time, I looked down the hallway to the grandma's room and saw the door was shut. I went up to it and it was locked. My friend called me back over when he saw the back door was wide open. We got the grandma's door unlocked and nothing was touched or out of place. It couldn't have been a draft that closed it. I tested it out. You had to push the door hard to get it shut. The carpet touched the bathroom of the door and would prevent it from shutting. In the next few months, I was terrified of that place. I slept with a fan on high every night, even when it got cold, just so I couldn't hear any sounds. I've wondered for years how that happened and searched for a reasonable explanation. A few weeks ago, I saw a movie about these people who lived in a house without the owners knowing. Maybe people heard the grandparents were leaving for 6 months and wanted to squat there. Maybe someone was living there without us knowing for days. It seemed unlikely, but it is a possibility. I don't think it was an animal. There was no signs of an animal, and we never saw any during that 6-month period. It all started with something grabbing the doorknob to my grandma's room. I believe that was paranormal. Okay, so spooky ghost in the house.
Do you think it was paranormal?
Yeah, someone was just twisting the knobs, you know?
Yeah, because that's what a ghost wants to do, is just walk in and twist a bunch of knobs.
Ooh, I heard chains rattling outside my door.
Well, awesome. Well, that's going to wrap us up for the evening. Thank you all for joining us for the telling of Jay's Journal and other spooky stories online. As always, a huge thank you to our paid supporters of the show, Modelo Time, Holden Strong at Great Britain, Curtis and Lara, Mothman, Devin, Lara, Conklin family, and Lou. Your paid support of the show is tremendously helpful. Thank you very much. If you yourself want to become a paid supporter of the show, we have many tiers. Just click on the follow button at the bottom of Buzzsprout. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, if you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. As always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.